Trent Cotney and John Kenney are dedicated to helping the construction industry with legal business and safety challenges. Welcome to this week's episode of Law and Mortar.
Hey, I'd like to welcome everybody to another episode of Law and Mortar. This is episode 99. I'm Trent Cotney. As always, I got John Kenney with me. John, how you doing?
As always, just rolling along and keeping going and always enjoying life. That's what we always do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Been a very, very interesting first quarter. Heading into 2Q now. We've got changes constantly. I don't know about you, but everything that it doesn't matter whether it's phone calls, emails, social media, whatever, text messages, tariffs and immigration. Those are the two issues. I know we've talked about it in prior podcasts, but since our last one, there was, the Liberation Day tariffs that kind of went into effect. A lot of uncertainty. Recognize that some of this is being done for negotiating purposes, but we've seen the market take a real beating last few days. Last I looked at the futures, it was still getting beat up today. So I'm not going to look at my 401k for a while, John. I'll
No, you
let that
definitely
go.
don't want to.
I'm curious, what are you hearing from the business side for the contractors you talk to? What are their concerns? Are they concerned about it? Do they view it as noise, or what are they doing?
I'd say 30 days ago, they viewed it more as noise. And I'd say now we're all kind of waking up and realizing that regardless of what ones are going to be negotiated, what ones are going to be left, it's going to be a constant change on a weekly basis, if not daily. And turmoil and disruption leads to confusion. And I think they're from the calls I'm getting, everybody's starting to notice. What do I do to protect myself? Well, honestly, this was easier to try to do that during the pandemic because it was easier to read. I don't know right now because things are changing so quickly. I'm starting to see a lot of construction numbers slow down as far as investment going in. Can it swing around in 30, 60 days? Of course it can. Is it very likely? I don't know. I wouldn't want to put like my 401k. I don't want to talk about that because I don't really know. But
Right.
that's what I'm seeing. And then immigration is, I'm getting a lot of calls on that. And I know you're going to jump on that a little bit deeper. But where I'm hearing the confusion is, oh, I'm using subs, so I'm okay. Well, no, that's not really the case. You're not okay. And if your sub disappears anyways, you're still got the liabilities of getting a job done. So I think your 100% dependent contractors, which there seems to be more of them on subs, are probably really worried the most right now because what happens if their workforce disappears in a weekly raid, which it can, very well can.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Back to the tariff issue. One of the things, obviously, I'm struggling too from the legal standpoint. I've talked about, we've written about it, we've talked about on here how you can always have a price acceleration provision in your contract if you're a contractor that will account for sudden increase in tariffs. Any of our listeners want that? Just hit me up. I'll send it to you for free. But here's something I was thinking about, and John, you know you're a lot deeper into this than I am, but the the justification that I've heard from the Trump administration for these tariffs is to encourage manufacturing to come back to the states, right? There's a lot, everything from automakers to pharmaceuticals to you name it. That is the justification. What I wonder is who is going to do this work? We have, an immigration policy that's basically going right to the heart of the migrant labor that or immigrant labor that's used for, construction, hospitality, agriculture, you name it. If that immigration policy dries that up, who is going to where is this labor coming from? And that's something, I've struggled with understanding. I like the idea. I would love for us to go back to being able to really produce cars and ships and stuff, that kind of stuff. But I also wonder what's going to happen here. There's got to be some kind of breaking point. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's a valid point, and I think there's a lot of discussion, a lot of disagreement, and not a lot of straightforward thinking. But one thing I can tell you, I think the thought process a lot of people have is that we're going to go back and bring 1960s and 70s manufacturing back with a lot of human participation. I don't see that. I do believe that there will be, we already started with more manufacturing of high-tech items in the country in the last 10 years or so. But guess what drives it? Robotics. I saw a great clip the other day. I believe it was Porsche. I know BMW has a plant in the Carolinas that is almost 100% automated, but this Porsche plant, they're only humans that are involved in making their cars are the ones that check in minimally to watch the machines. So I
Mhm.
think that's going to be a driver. Again, I think it's the same way with the labor situation. That's 1980s thinking that we're going to the market work. I have not seen that recently in a long time. Have you?
No, and I
I
think
have
that,
no participation.
yeah, I think they're gonna have to retool, and we've talked about this. This kind of leads to the immigration discussion. One of the things that you and I both advocated for is streamlining, having a legal process to allow workers to come in, be tracked, pay taxes, perform work. Just like if I was going to go up to Canada, I'm not going to get a lot of hassle. Well, I might get more hassle now, but it's going to be it's not going to be as difficult as it is for someone that's lives in Mexico to come up here, do work, and return. And I don't like the H-2B process. It's not effective. It's way too administratively burdened, and it's limited. It's capped. So there's got to be a better mechanism to allow that. Maybe, between automation and that, maybe that's the solution. But labor concerns me. I know, and that there are a lot of both W-2 and 1099 labor is immigrant labor, and if these immigration policies, we've heard about the ICE raids. There were some very public ones that have made the news here recently. If we start eliminating our labor, who's going to do this work? That's
Yeah.
my concern, is that we're blessed in roofing and construction. There's tons of work to do, tons of work. But I think labor rates are just going to increase dramatically. I don't see any way around that, unless there's some streamlined process to allow immigrants in here. But I think that is going to be very difficult to do without congressional approval, and that is
I think
just
that's
a
dead at least
big
for the next
morass.
years, at least. And
Yeah.
maybe for the next 4 years. I don't think there's um anybody interested in the governmental portion. There's a lot of talk in that, but look, if it was interested in it, it would have been done the last 10, 20 years. So
Mhm.
what's happening is now that's different is just what you said. We have raids and deportation for sure going on and showing up and targeting industries like ours that are 20 to 30% undocumented. I mean, regardless of who you voted for, those are the facts. Or if you're in the roofing and construction industry, 20 to 30% of the labor force is undocumented. And that's been that way for quite a while. So hopefully, I think we're further down the line for technology, not as far as we think, as far as robotics and those things go, but the factories, I think that's almost immediate. I do not see a factory being built in whether, whatever. If they broke ground tomorrow, what's it going to take 2 years before you start producing something? That's about right, from my experience in those areas. So in 2 years, is it going to have a large human force? No, I think a factory that required 5,000 to 10,000 people in the 60s and 70s at the heyday are now only going to require 200 people, 250 people in admin support. So I don't think you're going to get the bang for your buck in the labor force. And honestly, I don't think we have the labor force to handle it anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like 6 months from now, maybe there'll be a somewhat clearer picture. I'm hoping. And none of this, just for our listeners, none of this is political commentary. This is just our concern about construction, right? And part of my job is to identify potential issues or threats to the industry and address them. And tariffs and immigration, while there may be some good things from that, I also am very concerned from a construction standpoint because it affects material prices and it affects labor. So, I don't know what to expect, John. I think the best thing that I'm telling people is, you know, run a tight ship, you know, run a tight ship. I mean, I can give you a personal story. We we were going to get a new truck. I was going to trade in my wife's, SUV, and we're going to get a truck. And I put that purchase on hold. I put it on hold for a variety of reasons. One, because there's a lot of uncertainty. Two, the market crashed. And three, I don't know what's going on with taxes and if there'll be some kind of personal deduction. The uncertainty, I think, is going to have an impact on major purchases. It's got to, because if I'm acting that way, I assume a lot of contractors are probably doing the same. Wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah, no, well, let's just say the tariffs with the trucks, they're talking about, that could be 15, $20,000, but those are the type of trucks we need. So what are you going to do now? You're going to take that, put 10,000 into your old truck and keep it going for another year till you see where this all plays out. So I think there's going to be, like anything else, there's always consequences to everything that happens. And I agree with you. This is not political to our listeners. I have been in this industry since the Carter administration. So I have been through a lot of administrations. And guess what? None of them have solved our issues in this industry, not a single one of them. So you just have, what do we have to do? We have to weigh out what we're given, what our playing field is, and eventually we should know our playing field. And then we've got to buckle up and we got to do what's best for our industry, same as we've always done.
Yeah, I think that's the safe bet. You know, I don't doubt that by the time we get off this, there'll be more news that we have to digest. Part of that I think is strategic to keep the plate spinning, but it's making it very difficult, both from a business standpoint and from a legal standpoint, to get your thumb down on where things are going next. Before we get to the question of the day, though, you've been real busy. I see you all over the place. You're on the road. You're speaking. Why don't you give people a little preview of kind of what's coming up, 2Q for you? What do you have on the horizon?
Oh, yeah, I've been busy. It's been enjoyable traveling around. So, matter of fact, next week I'm off to Chicago, then Indianapolis, estimating training, then back to Florida, and we've got an event over in Orlando that you're going to join me at for Beacon. And then I got a bunch of events set up with Carlisle and Versico at their training center, and I've got Elevate and other organizations. And honestly, I have training. I'm not booked solid, so don't hear that. If you need any, you can get a hold of me. But I have training already booked out till the end of the year, which is pretty good, because people now are starting to realize the best way to protect your company is to get your people to understand how to project manage, how to estimate, how to be a superintendent, and that seems to be where we're at. And then of course we have FRSA coming up. I
Yep.
mean, that's the end of second quarter in June. We always look forward to seeing all our Florida friends at there, and I know you'll be there. But that's what I've got coming up over the next couple months.
Yeah, yeah, same here. A lot of travel. I would say 1Q and 4Q tend to be the busiest, but definitely a lot of travel. Always looking forward to the FRC Expo. It's like a family reunion. I get to see,
Yeah,
a lot of friends I've made in the industry, and I always bring my son too. So he's been going since he's 2 years old. So
and he gets bigger and bigger. He can work the booth on his own now.
that's why I keep telling him he's going to be 16 here. He's going to have to start doing it on his own. So, all right, John, let's turn to the question of the day. This question kind of related, kind of not related, but figured it's close enough. So we were talking about trucks, we're talking about tariffs. This question is from Jimmy. Jimmy's question is fleet enterprise, fleet groups. If I'm summarizing it here, the question is do you have any tips on how to maintain fleet, what you should do to negotiate fleet, how do you set up fleet? I can tell you from a legal perspective, oftentimes we have discussions about putting, vehicles and equipment rentals and things like that in a separate company for tax purposes and liability purposes. Also talk to your insurance agent to figure out the best way to insulate yourself there, because commercial auto is some of the largest claims that you can experience as a contractor. But, any advice on fleet? How do you do it? How do you maintain it? I know, because I know you've handled everything soup to nuts, and I know you dealt with fleet as well.
Well, I like fleet leasing. I think that is very good to use in the industry for a few reasons. First of all, everything is negotiable when you deal with a fleet leasing company. And different things can happen. One is you're going to be on a set software watching your trucks, your repair bills, all the things that go along with it, your gas usage. I mean, there's so many things that come along with it. Now, a lot of other things as you trade stuff in, you can build up credits. You get credits when you get that actually go towards the purchase of your next lease vehicle, or you can buy your own vehicle out. There's also options for that. So honestly, I think for a contract, and a lot of contractors like, oh, I'm not big enough for that. Well, if you've got 2 or 3 vehicles on the road, you're actually big enough to look into leasing. They don't care. But as you grow, it becomes a lot easier to actually get the bigger equipment that you need at a price that you can build into your overhead and that. So my opinion is it's absolutely worth looking into. And just go in remembering this is one thing where everything is negotiable. There is no set. They'll tell you it's set, but it's not. They will negotiate down to anything that fits you. They're all customizable.
Yeah, I think leasing also adds a convenience. I mean, if you own all your vehicles, then you're having to figure out everything from, how to install toolboxes to wrapping to whatever it is, and then maintenance, on top of that. So
They'll
I,
also, one thing I want to jump on that, Trent, that I didn't talk, they'll lock prices in. So now especially is most important. So when you do your pre-planning and you say, I'm going to be buying 6 vehicles, replacing old vehicles over this year, you would have actually locked in. There may have been some caveats to a point, but they pre-purchase. So they're
hmm,
buying across the country. So the larger ones are pre-purchasing and they usually are not affected by a lot of these price fluctuations for the current year that you pre-planned out.
yeah, I saw Ford was doing some employee pricing. Maybe I can convince the wife that we need a Raptor, but we'll wait and see on that one. All right, John, we've come to the end of episode 99. Really appreciate all our loyal listeners. We do this for you guys. Thank you for all your input. Feel free to reach out to us anytime. If you want to reach me, you can email me, trent.cotney@arlaw.com, or hit me up on social at Trent Cotney. John, how can they get you?
Yeah, at John Kenney on social and also on the email, it's jkenny@cotneyconsulting.com. Always look forward to hearing from our fans.
John Kenney, best in the biz. Thank you guys. We'll see you soon.
Take care, everybody.